Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started. The Australians are happy, but not the Brazilians as we approach the August 5th start date of the Rio Olympics. The Australians originally said their delegation would not move into Olympic Village because it was not safe or ready. Now, after a quick response from organizers to address the leaky plumbing and exposed wires, the Aussies are ready to return. Meanwhile, a poll in Sao Paulo finds a majority of Brazilians pessimistic about the impact of the Games. International Olympic Committee head Thomas Bach saying every host city has a last-minute issue or issues, and he expects a fantastic Games. Recently, when I interviewed Bach, he was excited about Brazil's diversity of enrichment. He said, let each country show the world their culture. We'll see. The Russians aren't happy either. President Vladimir Putin blaming a political plot for stripping some of the country's delegation of the right to compete in the Rio Olympics. This after the global governing body for athletics reaffirmed its ban of Russia's track and field team in response to systematic state-sponsored doping. It left up to other sports world governing bodies to clear individual Russian competitors. Some swimmers and rowers forced to stay home too. Putin saying the absence of the Russian competitors will diminish the Games. Well, in 2012 in London, the U.S. was first in medal count with 104. The Russian Federation third with 82. Not this year. And don't look for Roger Federer at the Olympics. The Swiss tennis star said he'll miss the rest of the season, including the Rio Games and the U.S. Open. The 17-time Grand Slam champion writes on Facebook he needs more extensive rehab to prolong his career after knee surgery earlier this year. Federer already has 2 Olympic medals. He took home to the silver in men's singles at the Olympics in London in 2012 and won gold in men's doubles in 2008 in Beijing, joining Thomas Burdick, Simona Halep, John Isner, and others pulling out. But his knee injury, however, a very different circumstance than the other dropouts. Now, from tennis to golf, a look at the health of the sport with former PGA of America CEO Joe Steranka.
You were, as we know, the PGA of America head for years, and you were 25 years involved in the PGA of America as well. And the two numerous to mention: the Buffalo Agency, a worldwide strategic agency golf business, the chief global strategist, president of the Honda Classic. We can go on, but from your perspective, the golf business encompasses a lot of different things. How's it doing?
It's the state of the industry is solid. Let's face it, things changed in the aftermath of the Great Recession. That any industry that relies on discretionary time and money was more greatly challenged. To demonstrate its relevance as a place that people should spend those very precious commodities. So golf, we've got 17 million loyal golf fans and participants out of the 24 million plus that play the game every year, and they drive a lion's share, 83% of the revenue that comes from our sport. 83% of the rounds, 85% of the revenue that comes into the industry every year. So I mentioned that, overall it's a $68 billion a year industry, and maybe $30 billion of that comes from golf course operations. The 440 million times a year that people show up at a golf course and go see a PGA professional to help them with their game and play on great greens prepared by a GCSA superintendent, and oftentimes managed by a CMAA manager.
You covered, just by nature of how the industry is today, maybe 30% of it, maybe 40%. It's hard because the statistic is blurry. So numbers worldwide, I know you don't have them down to the decimal point, but give us a sense of how big the golf industry is globally.
Yeah, it's about 100 million people who play around the world or have played at some point around the world, but also about $100 billion a year industry globally, with America racking up, over 2/3 of that. People now travel the world to chase these bucket list appointments on the world's greatest golf courses. In the last few years, have had the pleasure of playing in New Zealand and Tasmania and the UK and all across the USA. But it's the biggest year in the history of the game globally, and that is the celebration of the U.S. Open again last week in Pittsburgh. The state of Pennsylvania. Golf is about a $5 billion a year industry there. And we kicked off with the Masters, obviously, in April, and we'll follow up with a Open Championship, British Open Championship at Troon, and go to Baltusrol for the PGA of America's 100th birthday celebration, but also the season's final major, the PGA Championship. But the largest television audience in the history of men's and women's golf will come out of Rio, believe it or not. 60 men, 60 women playing 72 holes for medals for the first time in modern Olympic history. And it will usher in a whole new generation of young people that are looking up to these stars saying, yeah, I'd like to win Olympic gold, silver, or bronze as well and represent my country playing a game of golf.
Down in the Southern Hemisphere, does that left to right hook you put on the ball go right to left?
I was fortunate to go down there with Ian Baker Finch, the 1991 British Open champion, who's a good friend from back in South Florida. He went to Barnbougle Dunes, a great, business organized by the Sattler family of Tasmania and Australia, and was made a hole-in-one on the Lost Dunes course, number 17. So
I didn't set you up for that. That's
so.
Incredible. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'd never really known that you had done that, and I know you well enough to realize that it's painful for you to have kept that quiet 9 minutes into this interview. I thought you would have led with that.
Well, my biggest perspective that relates to the business of golf here in America, when I went to New Zealand and Australia, and I've seen it before in Ireland and in Scotland and England, but the cost of golf is much lower there. And even, looking at the year-round climbs of Australia, oftentimes you can join one of the top private clubs there for, $3,500 a year in annual dues. But those courses might have 1,000 or, for a 36-hole facility might have, as many as 3,000 members. And here in the United States, we're stuck at anywhere from 200 to 500 members for 18 holes, depending on where it is. And I think for private clubs to be sustainable, we've got to figure out how we manage many more members to be able to economically sustain golf courses going into the future. And they've proven you can do it in other parts of the world, and I think we need to take a look at that here in the United States.
Great segue, Joe. Just a couple more, Southern Hemisphere, then we do focus back on Rio for a minute, and people may not understand that this is not a story about whether Louis Oosthuizen or Vijay Singh are right about playing or not. This is a story about, both on the men's and women's side, an incredible, prolific opportunity to open golf to the masses internationally who've not yet seen it. And then my question would be, as Rio winds down in mid-August and beyond, what do we do, you do, everybody does to take advantage of that to bring more golf to the masses in an affordable way?
For the first time in our modern history, we're going to have state governments investing public dollars in the development of golf. Up to this point, golf as an industry, whether it's in the United States or Germany or South America and Australia, has been left to raise money from the private sector or help raise money through philanthropy for golf scholarships and the like. And now, as it becomes part of the national sports culture, and these national sports federations and golf federations of the world are being held accountable to both develop talent and give them the resources they need to win Olympic medals, to add to the medal count. And, that's a huge step to put golf on par, pun intended, with other sports. Tennis enjoyed a jump in global popularity when they came into the sport. And you're right. I think the organizations that made Olympic golf possible again did not harbor any, feeling that we were going to get every player who could potentially qualify for the event to go play. But by and large, they're all going to be there. That there are few things in this world that money can't buy, and that's an Olympic medal and a place in Olympic history and in sports history. So it's a compelling reason for the top women and the top men in the world of golf to go down to South America.
I find it incredible in a way that years ago, Tiger so much dominated the headlines you couldn't pick up a golf magazine, clearly, and others without talk of Tiger, the Tigerization of the tour, et cetera, et cetera. Regardless of whether he's coming back or not, which is not your issue or mine, do you find it interesting and maybe positive that we're spending so little now time talking about Tiger Woods as an influence in golf today?
Well, you mentioned 30 years in sports, so I had the good fortune of working with Michael Jordan when he turned professional. I was at ProServe and working with David Falk and Donald Dell on the development of the Air Jordan brand and seeing how he became an iconic global figure. And the NBA was ruining the day that would lose Michael Jordan to bring in the rating points and the cross-generational and audience that he would attract. But today, we're blessed to have Seth Curry and LeBron James and, a great generation, a new generation of NBA players. And golf has never been in better hands, taking a look at the young guns on both the men's tour, from the Jordans and Jasons and Rorys and Rickies to, the Lexis and Lydias on the LPGA. So, time marches on, my friend, and but the beauty of it is this next generation of or new generation of players, they're very comfortable in social media. They're more accessible and available to share what's going on in their lives with their peers, and it's going to make golf all the more interesting. So the combination of the globalization of the sport, the addition of the Olympics, these young role models that young people in America and around the world can look up to, golf's never been in better hands.
The guy's been in the sports business for nearly 40 years, and when he says time marches on, he means it. Joe Steranka, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. The producer of the show, Alex Cohen. Associate producer, Bethel Habte. Assistance provided by Tanner Simpkins and Carlos Waddick. And the executive editor of Reuters Digital, Dan Colarusso.